Hey folks, I'm travelling around a little bit this week. I've been to Nelson Bay where I looked at Eucalyptus umbra, and tonight I've just got to be in Newcastle on the way home to Sydney, and I'm going to try and document another tree. This is an absolutely beautiful area of Newcastle. I'm not too familiar with the Newcastle area much. I haven't been here very often in the last sort of 30 years, I guess, but this is an area called Lambton, sort of the northwest of Newcastle, I suppose. There's some beautiful bushland reserves around here. I'm in some what's almost wet sclerophyll forest, or what almost looks like Sydney turpentine ironbark forest. There's turpentine, there's spotted gum, Corymbia maculata. I think there's even Corymbia gymifera as well, although here it could be Corymbia eximia or one of those. There's some blackbutts. There's Eucalyptus fibrosa in some parts. And I think there might be a second ironbark here as well. We're on sort of enriched soils. But what I want to try and show is what we call the white mahogany. That's Eucalyptus acmenoides. It's not a tree I come across very often. Acmenoides is called the white mahogany, and I'm pretty sure there's a beautiful one right here, going straight up there. Acmenoides can be a big tree. They can hit 45 metres tall, and they're associated with sort of wetter sclerophyll forests or more enriched sclerophyll forests. They go north up the coast from, again, they say about Sydney Harbour, like Eucalyptus umbra, Sydney Harbour. Though I've rarely seen them in northern Sydney, though I rarely pick them up in the Sydney area. But they're north of the harbour, and they go up the coast a little bit into the coastal hinterland, and then they punch up the Queensland coast and a few interior areas, say sort of maybe the tablelands. They go right up to around Cooktown, north of Cairns. So they've got a massive distribution. 45 metre tall tree. It's like a stringy bark, and it has been said they can get confused with stringy barks. It's a very mahogany looking tree, but remember when we look at resinifera, it sort of has bark like this. It's more fibrous than a stringy bark. So one of the tips is you shouldn't be getting real genuine strings off it. You should be getting sort of more shortly fibrous bark, and that's definitely what I'm getting here. One of the problems with this area, I'm in Newcastle, is you might confuse it with Eucalyptus microcories, the tallowood. And we're going to have a good look. But what I'm getting so far is these fruits on the ground, which are very acmenoides. They look a lot like umbra. They look a hell of a lot like umbra, but this tree is a lot taller. And if you see my Eucalyptus umbra video, umbra don't get anywhere near this. Well, they normally don't get this big. And there's going to be some differences in the canopy, in the leaves we can look at. And I've just got to try and target some trees and see if we can get some accessible foliage so we can look at some features. But this is on nice, enriched, sort of fertile country. It's not really the habitat for umbra. But this is a tree that can get confused with tallowood, microcories. They reckon you can confuse it with maybe piperita and concidiniana and some stringy barks as well. So this one's got, yeah, some nice fibrous bark to it. It's a nice big tree. It's beautiful and big. Probably, yeah, over 20 metres in this beautiful enriched, almost a wet sclerophyll forest here. But I'm just going to see if we can get some trees with some accessible foliage. But this is a beautiful area. I'm in this park called Jesmond Park, and it's got bushland and sort of parkland. It's quite beautiful. Just sometimes with my videos, folks, you're just well into the realms of getting really big, tall trees. and, you know, trying to find the best material you can. But I'll just give you a look at this. I'm in the parkland now. I've got a busy road, nice cricket grounds here. But there's these beautiful, beautiful tall trees here. And if we were anywhere else, say in Sydney, you'd sort of guess straight away that these were tallow woods, what we call Eucalyptus microcories. But here's some sort of semi-juvenile foliage coming off. And I'm just going to collect this. And the other thing I'm going to do is, if you look at the ground here, this might do us for the fruit. I'm finding all these on the ground. And these are very different to Eucalyptus microcories. Just popped over here to get away from the traffic noise. First thing about acmenoides is the foliage. It is thin. It's got a really thin texture, and it's described sort of online as having a thin texture. Compared to Eucalyptus umbra, it's the other side of the spectrum. It's very on the thin side. So I've had trouble in the past collecting Eucalyptus eugenioides from around this part of the world. There's not too many eugenioides records sort of around a lot of the Newcastle area. You will get some, but I reckon eugenioides is possibly a tree you might mix up with acmenoides, but don't forget, with most of the stringy barks, they're concolorous leaves. We're not really getting that oblique leaf base. We're getting it a little bit. As I said, you can get it, but if you check most of the leaves, they're not really doing the oblique leaf base, not really strongly anyway. It's more of a mahogany leaf. And in acmenoides, they're strongly discolorous. Strongly discolorous leaves. And that's what they're known to have. I got a very cloudy day here, and it's getting sort of late as well. But umbra, which I also made today, was concolorous. Acmenoides is discolorous, just like resinifera. They're very discolorous leaves. So you just got that thin texture and strongly discolorous. And they'd say it varies across the whole population. Remember, it goes from Sydney Harbour up to Cooktown. But most of the time, they're meant to be strongly discolorous, or well and truly discolorous anyway. The thing about acmenoides, people say, I've got no sunlight here, which will probably demonstrate this better, but they're glossy green. They're glossy green up the top. So if you had something like eugenioides, they're concolorous. They're more of a dull green, but they can be a little bit glossy. And don't forget, they'll have the uneven oblique leaf bases. So these are nice and glossy. I'm not sure of the dimensions. You know, you're probably looking at something like 15 centimetres long, maybe 3 centimetres wide, something like that is what they're looking like. They're very resinifera-like. And another description about them is they've got a very strong reticulate venation, which the stringy barks don't really have. So like the Angophora sort of costata and the Crimbigamifera, they've got that very strong reticulate venation. And apparently the stringy barks don't have that. I've never taken the time to look closely, but I probably have at some stage. I just can't remember. But acmenoides has this strongly reticulate venation in between the sort of secondary veins. So that's a feature of acmenoides as well. I think I'm going to fail you again here in not getting bud material. And I've been looking at the trees around and I can't really see any buds. But let's just have a good look at the fruits. Similarly to Eucalyptus umbra, we're getting these, and I'd say Eucalyptus eugenioides as well, you're getting these really strongly pedicellate fruits. But in acmenoides, they're very pedicellate, and they're on a long common peduncle as well. The peduncle's about 20 mil long, up to 20 mil, and the pedicels can be up to about 8 mil. You can see they're very bowl-shaped, and They're sort of like Eucalyptus, but to me, they're just too pedicellate to be Eucalyptus, and I showed those other differences as well. The tops of them look very much like Umbra, and they can have 3 to 5 valves, but you can see they're sort of inserted, enclosed, I should say. I keep using that word, inserted, but they're enclosed. They're described as having a descending disc. And yeah, the valves are enclosed or at rim level. Exert at all, they're not exerted like Eucalyptus resinifera would be, but these fruits are looking sort of very different to Eucalyptus resinifera. You might say they look a little bit like Pilularis, or possibly, not really Piperita, but Pilularis maybe, but they're smaller than Pilularis, they're not as big. These fruits I've got, looking outside the phone, they'd be about, I'd say 7 mil across, maybe 8 mil across at the widest part of the bowl there, and yeah, maybe about 6-7 mil long, something like that. So they look like Pilularis a bit, they're just not as big. They're nowhere near as big as what they would be for Pilularis, and the bark's completely different. The bark goes a fair way up the tree, pretty much to the top. So that fibrous bark there's an acmenoides next to a turpentine. So you just got a turpentine there on the left and an acmenoides on the right. And the bark goes a fair way up. It's possible the upper branches are going bare, but you got that pretty much that stringy looking bark all the way up. So it's got a very, to me, they got a very microcoris look, and I haven't got a video on that yet, but I'm just seeing differences in the canopy. Microcoris, it's got shorter leaves. Acmenoides is looking like it's got longer leaves to me than the average microcoris, but I have to make a video on that as well. The fruits are in 11s to 15s, or sorry, the buds. The buds are in 11s to 15s, the umbellasters. So it's one of these ones in the 7 to 15 group again, but they're sort of described as being 11 to 15. So that's pretty common for acmenoides. There's a 5-valved fruit. Here's a beautiful acmenoides just in the park environment. You can see they've just got a beautiful straight up habit. They're reminding me a little bit of brown barrels. Sort of like a brown barrel like tree. Just going straight up. Beautiful upright spreading canopy. They're look very strong and symmetrical. They're a beautiful tree, acmenoides. Nice and sturdy and straight a lot of the time in this parkland. Sort of a reliable, discernible habit I'm finding, even though I don't see them very often. Quite beautiful. Here's another Titan one here. Beautiful big tree. And here's a branch that's just fallen down. You can see that it's bare up the top. So you can see that's a bare skin there. No stringy fibres on it, so the very upper branches go bare. The only evidence I've got here, the only strong evidence, is that single fruit. That single fruit, which isn't a microcoris fruit at all. That's definitely a acmenoides fruit. And here's the discolorous leaves. If the bark type was any different, you'd be maybe thinking Pilularis. I'm throwing them all in here together. The more videos I make, the more linkages I make. It reminds me of brown barrel fastigata. It reminds me of Pilularis, and it reminds me of resinifera as well, sort of putting all those in together. But these leaves are very thin. This branch might have dropped, I don't know, a couple of days ago. And discolorous. I'm just losing the light here, and it's starting to rain again as well. But good evidence for acmenoides. I also found some buds. They're old, and they're probably not fully developed either. but we'll just get a bit of an idea of what the buds look like. Just haven't been able to get everything today. The buds, when I look at photos of them online, they look a bit like Eucalyptus umbra. And, you know, they'd be sort of, I guess they'd be related to Eucalyptus umbra, but they've got that really strong beaked operculum. Or calyptrae there, thinking about ones like maybe robusta and I guess umbra as well, just so that really beaked operculum, which I'm guessing is a good feature of the mahoganies. They're meant to be in 11s to 15s. These are pretty old and crusty, and I'm sorry I couldn't do more justice to them, but at least you can get a bit of a look at what's happening. Peduncle to 20 mil, and the pedicels can be up to about 7-8 mil, like we had a look at, and maybe elongating in the fruit stage. But that's what the old buds look like, and I just can't get my hands on any good ones at the moment. But that's probably enough for you. There's just a ton of fruit on the ground, so it's probably one of those generous ones. And like I said, it's one I don't come across very often. I just don't work in the areas where it shows up. But these are beautiful. This one here's got a DBH of about 1 metre across, maybe more, probably more than 1 metre. It's a beautiful old remnant. You can see they've got a very generous canopy. So it's a beautiful parkland tree. I did start off in the nice bush over yonder, but I had to get out into the park. But that's probably enough for you. Just remember the thin textured discolorous leaves and those fruit, and I reckon you'd be right. They're sort of the main features for acmenoides, I would think. But in a dense forest, like over that way, they're going to trip you up a little bit, especially if you've got things like microcories or maybe umbra growing in amongst them. They'll trip you up a little bit. You might need a good decent pole saw to sample the foliage. Beautiful tree.